Okay, number three in my series on black nationalism in political aesthetics. That is, the use of the arts in political expression. And my view is that black nationalism is as well expressed in reggae and hip hop music as it is anywhere. Though, of course, the writings and speeches of Marcus Garvey, Walter Rodney, Malcolm X are central as well. Now, by the time you have a Jamaican recording industry starting in about 1960 or so, Rastafarianism is almost 30 years old. And, as it turns out, many of the recording artists and musicians and so on the island of Jamaica by that time are Rastas or have pronounced Rasta sympathies, which means that they have black nationalist sympathies as well, and symphonies too. Many people think the first ska record or the first characteristically Jamaican pop record is "Oh Carolina" by the Folks Brothers, recorded in 1960 by Prince Buster, a sound system operator in Jamaica. It was the sound system operators, Coxsone Dodd, Duke Reed, and Buster, among others, who were the early Jamaican record producers. Partly this is because on the sound systems, these outdoor parties where records were spun, which is the primary way that music was experienced in Jamaica, probably aside from radio in the 40s and 50s, the sound system operators who played American music, R&B, swing, and so on, realized that there was some market for a native expression, as well as by the time you get to about 1960 or so, the R&B is being very much toned down in the U.S. and white-oriented rock and roll is the dominant pop style. Okay. So they start to try to make records, and to put them on their own sound systems. And primarily, they're not even attempting to sell records. They're attempting to make, sounds that people will dance to and it will attract them to their sound systems. Now, when Prince Buster, put the Folks Brothers in the studio to sing this kind of shuffle or boogie-type tune, "Oh Carolina," he also brought in Count Ossie, who was a master drummer, master Rasta ceremonial drummer. And, Ossie and his group provided the rhythmic underpinnings of that song. And that is, it's close anyway to being a ska beat, which is, this lurching dance music that is characterized by a heavy emphasis on the 2 and 4 beats in a 4-beat measure, and is very horn-heavy music and was the dominant form of pop music from the beginning of the 60s to about 1966. So right at the origin of Jamaican music, where you get the first expressions of the beat that ended up being the Jamaican beat, because slowed down it is rock steady and reggae, you have at that origin Rasta ceremonial music. Now, not a lot of ska records are explicit in their Rasta ideology, but there's a lot of Rasta imagery that would have been evident to people who already understood the content of the ideology or the religion. So anytime you're mentioning lions, for example, that is a reference to Haile Selassie, or the Israelites, like some later records, and so on. Slightly obscure references. Although a lot of this stuff is not, it's instrumental. A lot of ska is instrumental. And of course, ska was revived in many contexts. Late 70s England, the Specials, and the English Beat, Madness, Bad Manners in the U.S. in the early 90s, Rancid, Operation Ivy, even No Doubt, and so on. Mighty Mighty Boss Tones in a more pop vein. Now, in around 1966, the ska beat is modified and slowed into what came to be known as rock steady. and really the rock steady rhythm track would sound to almost anyone, I think, like a reggae track. It is basically a reggae rhythm, and it is a half-speed ska rhythm as well. All these are based on the same basic rhythmic motif, and you know, that coincided with the visit of Haile Selassie to Jamaica, where he was greeted by hundreds of thousands of people as a living god, and that made it obvious to everyone how far Rastafarianism had extended its influence in Jamaica. And also, in 1966, supposedly the summer was too hot to keep doing the ska, so they wanted slower music and to chill out a little bit. Maybe they started smoking more ganja. I don't know. At any rate, they toned down the horns and moved to what's more like a basic rock band, and especially Duke Reed at Treasure Island, but also Dodd and Buster and others, made this kind of, and also highly influenced by American soul music, created this rock steady rhythm. They also moved away from a live music model of music production to, which after all, most of these records were consumed in sound systems, to a mode of production in which the record was manufactured in the studio. And they started to have multi-track recordings, so you could, for example, detach the rhythm track from the vocals and recycle the rhythm over and over in different records, and save a lot of money that way, for one thing. But that move, and also, you could give the DJs who were working on the sound system a context in which they could chatter or toast or rap over the record. So they started to make dub plates in which the vocals were removed, and perhaps the treble brought way down, and thus the bass emphatic, on which DJs like U-Roy or King Stitt by '69 could perform and rap. Now that move, in which you don't think of the song in terms of a simulated performance, but in terms of a studio item manufactured in the studio for recycling, and you think of each record as a kind of collage and as a context for reinterpretation, these developments in rocksteady, I suggest, have been absolutely central to pop music all over the world ever since. In fact, at the point where you are making recycled rhythm tracks available to DJs so they can talk over them at sound systems and so on, sound system parties, I'm willing to call that hip-hop. And that is the origin of hip-hop, as we're going to see. And so, in this way, black nationalist aesthetics changes the entire popular music of the world profoundly. And we'll go on to a little more Jamaican music next, roots reggae and dub.